Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to share with you an idea which I was discussing with a client, and which is something that in one shape or form we tried to put into practice. We did some of it about 10 years ago, and it is pertaining to being able to live in luxury around the world in multiple different parts of the world at different times a year. So it's a kind of fun little concept. I hope some people will take it as some inspiration and do something with it. There's lots of different variations. I'm going to cover a few of them, but I think for people who just consider how to maximize their quality of life, you're going to notice a few different things are true, right? One of those things is there is no perfect place in the world, so you have to pick a few perfect places, right? Second, the weather usually isn't great all year round, so you like to, follow the weather to some extent. And third of all, how your living space is set up is really important to your quality of life and your productivity, which includes not just the physical setup of the space, but also, whether you have staff or something like this to assist you. So I'm going to go through with you this concept in a moment. I would love to hear your comments on it, your feedback. Put them in the comments below. Let's get started. Before we do, if you haven't already, as always, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for your support. If you would like assistance with these subjects we deal with here, which are international asset protection, international tax optimization, forming companies, opening bank accounts, getting residencies around the world, relocating, getting second citizenships, whether it's with some of the citizenship by investment programs or other, please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send a message through our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. Okay. So we originally tested this idea in Costa Rica. I have to give most of the credit to some friends of mine who initiated it, and then one friend in particular who really put the effort in far more than everybody else to try and make it work. But here was basically the idea. So you probably want to be able to move around the world. You don't want to be stuck in one place. And you'd like to have multiple bases. Now, in theory, if you're very rich, you can afford to have houses around the world, and you can staff them, and you can, do all this stuff, right? In practice, most people are not in that situation. But most people would like to have some of the elements accordingly. And to some extent, you might say this is what hotels attempt to do. But the problem is that hotels are not really great living environments, and they tend to be super overpriced. Right? So staying in high-end hotels all the time, fairly expensive. Much cheaper to have an apartment, have a house, etc. You want some sort of lifestyle automation probably, which probably means, it's nice to have cleaners, maybe you have a chef. In some cases you need security, etc., just depending on where you are in the world. You also want to be able to be mobile, but the problem is it's really not very efficient. Like I'm an efficiency guy. I like optimization. And when I see that you have a house in, let's just say, one part of the world, that you're only there for, let's say, 3 months out of the year, and it's sitting empty the rest of the time, well, that can get expensive. Certainly you can pay for an inexpensive place, but then that reflects on your quality of life when you're there. You could say, all right, I'm just not going to have staff there when I'm not there, but then the staff doesn't know the place, they're not integrated with the local society, you have to go through the process of staffing up and staffing down, etc., etc. You could try traveling with your staff, you could bring them with you, that gets expensive, and also, maybe you need visas, etc. So, some of these things, if you're willing to put out a lot of money, you can make them work, or, there's a variety of things you could do. But really, it's appealing if you can have a place that is set up the way that you like, with people who you know and trust and do a good job and understand you, etc. But have that in multiple different parts of the world as you move through different parts of this world, whether it's seasons, etc. Interesting concept, right? So this was the idea that we worked on, etc. And we set up pretty successfully in Costa Rica, but lacked at the time, the financial means or the network of people to do it in other parts of the world. But I was discussing with a client recently who was building a house in one place, and we were just talking about the importance of, being able to switch to other locations and discuss the idea of kind of like swapping places. So you have a friend and they've got a place and they set it up and they do a really good job, and you've got one and you swap, right? So part of the year you have this one, part of the year they have that one. You can have a nice system, you can trust each other, and so you get kind of the effect of a long-term rental without having to have a long-term rental. And it can be much more personalized to you, in a sense, at much lower cost. You're basically only paying for one place at a time, and you're paying the full cost for that place at the time, but it's kind of going with you and you're just swapping, right? So this is an interesting idea, I think. Next thing that goes along into that is, rather than having 2 places, you could have 3 or 4. You'd have a group of people. And this introduces another interesting concept, which was part of our idea when we were doing it in Costa Rica. And that was the idea that it's actually really cool to sometimes have other people around. So, our original iteration of it was like a 10,000 square foot, but 1,000 square meter house, so pretty big. I think it was 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, something like that. And what this meant was you could have a bunch of people who are present there. Now, this is partially a function of where you're at in life. Maybe once you're married, you're less likely to do it. Once you have kids, you're less likely to do it, etc. But the idea that you can have maybe 2 or 3 people there, and people maybe can come and go in a little more fluid manner, is also kind of nice, because there's something to be said for that community, right? This engagement with other people, the networking. It was great. It kind of became a center point where a lot of people within the same social circle knew each other, knew other people. They'd say, oh, you're going to Costa Rica, you should go and see these people while you're there, etc. And that was kind of interesting. Now, that adds a layer of complexity to the plan, because if it's more fluid, then you have to figure out, how do you divide expenses, which is a little bit more of an issue. Now, you can basically Airbnb that. You can essentially have kind of like a closed loop Airbnb system where the only people who are allowed to participate are those who are involved. And honestly, maybe this is an interesting idea to have like NFTs, right? People buy and participate in that little community, and because they're part of that community, they're kind of pre-vetted, and that, okay, they can come and stay here, and everybody kind of knows, all right, here's what happens with the cost, etc. This does require, in our experience, you kind of need somebody who's going to take charge in each location, because in particular when it comes to staff and systems, you really need to organize things. You could just not have staff, but part of the appeal certainly is having staff. We tried hiring like a manager. It's usually pretty expensive to hire a manager, and the manager then needs to be managed, etc. So manager was not typically very optimal. It's much better when you have somebody who it's like, they like this place, it's their staff, they kind of train them, they work with them, etc. And you've got some degree of accountability, and you have that in each separate location. So how you want to do this, there's a variety of ways to do it, but I think it's pretty cool. You could just kind of get together with some people and say, hey, listen, Italy's really great, we'd like to have a place in Italy. And somebody else wants to have a place in Turkey, and somebody else in Thailand, and somewhere else in Costa Rica or Brazil or wherever, right? Dubai, whatever place it is that fits with you. So anyway, I hope it's an interesting idea for some of you as a way of being able to have kind of home bases in multiple parts of the world without having to pay to maintain home bases in multiple parts of the world. You can just pay to maintain one, but get the benefit of a bunch of others, and simultaneously do the same thing with other people, and simultaneously get hopefully a really great sense of community that can have a pretty far-reaching effect. So let me know what you think. Put it in the comments below. I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.